Hello people, and welcome to Crypto Exposed. XRP reaching $10,000. Here is the detailed breakdown. Okay guys, let's get into it. So, for the regular viewers of my channel, you already know how I feel about this, you know exactly where I'm about to go with it, but let's really get into it once again, because, you know, look, I take being a content creator, like, I do take it very seriously in the sense of, I do this for fun, but I always try to give you my most accurate information as possible, right? And I've said this numerous times, but there's not influencers who are doing that. They're just here to make money. So they'll just push whatever sounds good because it's going to get them a lot of views and engagement, and it's going to ultimately make them money. Now, let me make this clear. I'm an XRP holder. I'm very bullish on XRP. However, do I think that XRP is going to hit $10,000? Absolutely not. So I'm going to go through this and break this down. And I have to say, like, when I started to read this, because when I first saw it, I was like rolling my eyes. I was like, here we go. But there's someone who's actually started to counter this. And when I saw the arguments he was putting, I was like, this is literally what I've been saying on my channel for years now. It was crazy because he's like literally saying the exact same things that I've said before. And this goes to show me that when people really do understand XRP properly, we're all on the same page about what's going to happen, right? Like, we can see what the hype is and people just trying to exaggerate for views and for money. And I can see the people who've clearly done the proper research on XRP and understand what is realistic and what isn't. Because this guy sounds exactly like me. Like, all the research that I've led points to the things that this guy said as well. So I'm going to go over this and I'm going to just explain why $10,000, it's just not realistic, guys. And in my opinion, if you ask me, it isn't going to happen. So let's get into it. Okay, so I'm just going to go to the bullet points and then just like kind of give my opinion here. So ETFs, TradFi cannot send XRP to $100. So this is basically off of someone who's made a very popular video, and then I think basically someone's come and critiqued the video from what I've gathered. So let's really get into it. So ETFs and TradFi cannot send XRP to $100. I agree. At the end of the day, like, this is one thing that this guy said as well. Like, you know, if we're going to look at what ETFs can do, we could look at like what happened with Bitcoin, right? Because when the Bitcoin ETF got announced, Bitcoin hit a new all-time high. But has the price been that exponential since the ETFs has, you know, got into play? Like, don't get me wrong, now we're in the bull run. You know, Bitcoin did hit up to like $100,000 at one point. And so, yes, like, it's definitely helped and been a contributing factor. But I agree with what this guy said here in saying that if that was going to be the case, like, we'd have seen like Bitcoin get to like $1 million. If we're going to talk about XRP getting to $100, because it's that kind of comparison that you're talking about, right? And Bitcoin didn't get anywhere near that. So do I think an ETF and like TradFi and stuff would be good for XRP's price? Yes, absolutely, of course. But do I think it'll be good to the tune of $100 per XRP? No, I don't. I really don't. So I think it's going to take way more than that for this to occur. Now, let me just make this clear. Do I think $100 for XRP is possible? I do. I do think that's possible. I'm just saying I don't think these catalysts alone would be something that would send it to $100. And again, I don't think it would be something that would happen this cycle, right? So I'm just making that clear. He also mentioned about a super cycle off of the back of XRP because of all this activity. I disagree. You know, like, this is the kind of stuff where, like, why do you think XRP specifically is going to have a super cycle? You know, like, I've heard people talk about this whole super cycle thing many times now, and especially like now Trump's in office, they've talked about like a super cycle. Personally, you know, I don't really see it. And if I do see it, I don't think it's going to be just XRP that goes into a super cycle and then nothing else does, because even now, Bitcoin is leading the market, right? Don't get me wrong, XRP has outperformed Bitcoin currently, but if Bitcoin takes a tumble, the whole market takes a tumble with it, right? So while, yes, XRP had its impressive run in November and, you know, it's run up to like $3, yeah, that's cool. Like, I'm not saying that that's not impressive, but don't forget that Bitcoin was rallying as well. Bitcoin was rallying up to $100,000. So I'm not here to say like, I'm not here to say that like XRP can't do well and outperform Bitcoin, but what I'm saying is Bitcoin does lead the market. So as it stands right now, XRP will do well when Bitcoin's also doing well. If Bitcoin takes a tumble, XRP will take a tumble. And it's not just XRP, the whole crypto market. The whole crypto market follows Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the leader. You've just got to accept that. Like, this isn't me trying to be negative to XRP. I'm just being truthful. This is just facts. This is just what it is. So to say that like XRP alone is just going to go into this super cycle, I'm just not buying it. Like, I've heard this kind of stuff a lot before and it's never happened. And again, like, you're not really giving good arguments as to say why this is going to happen, you know, because at the end of the day, like, why couldn't Bitcoin go into a super cycle then? Because Bitcoin's getting a lot of adoption and, you know, President Trump's trying to do a lot for Bitcoin with it being in like a strategic reserve, etc., that kind of thing. So, you know, like, you know, how's that going to work for just XRP? Now, another thing that was mentioned was the executive order about XRP and like a strategic reserve and the stockpile. So I have to say, I have to give a bit of pushback on what the guy said here, because he said like there was no mention of XRP for the strategic reserve. Now, okay, we know that Trump changed his tune in the end, and you know, he kind of went back on his word about a strategic reserve, because at first it was a crypto strategic reserve, but he changed it to a Bitcoin strategic reserve in the end, and then a crypto stockpile. The thing with this is, anyway, like, first and foremost, XRP was mentioned. It was the first crypto that was mentioned, so I have to give a pushback on that. But the point about this really is, I don't want to say it was a nothing burger, but it really wasn't the way he tried to make it out to be at the beginning, right? Because it sounded like he was going to be investing in these cryptos now and stuff like that. It turned out that he was only going to be acquiring these cryptos with money that's already been like seized in these cryptos. So essentially, this is money that's already been seized from, let's just say, like illegal operations and things like that. And all they're doing is they're just holding on to the cryptos. So it's not like they're adding new XRP onto the balance sheet or new Bitcoin onto the balance sheet. They're literally just whatever they've already got in their wallets from illegal activities and things like that they've acquired over time. They're just saying that they're just going to keep that in a stockpile and Bitcoin in a strategic reserve. Not really that great, because that's not adding to any like supply and demand factors, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of taking the stuff out of circulation, but it was already out of circulation because it was already being held in a wallet. So all they're saying is, yeah, we're just going to keep it in that wallet. Do you know what I mean? All they're really saying is that we're not going to sell it. So it's not really adding a whole lot, to be honest with you. So again, yeah, I agree in the grand scheme. That's not what's going to send it to like $100. Okay. Here we've got market cap does matter. Yeah, so I hear a lot of people when they talk about XRP and they say, you know, oh, market cap doesn't matter. Market cap doesn't matter. I disagree with this, right? And look, I get the argument of what people say. I know how it works. Like, when you calculate the market cap of a crypto, it's not about how much actual money has gone into the crypto. It's just what the current price was that it was brought at. And is it times by the supply or something like that? It's something along those lines. So it's not necessarily when, like, for example, you say XRP has, let's just say, like a $36 billion market cap. There's not literally $36 billion that's been invested into XRP. That's the long story short of it. So I understand that completely. But what you still have got to understand is, even though that exact amount of money hasn't been invested into XRP to get it to that price, there's still a level of money that still had to have been invested for it to get to that price. So, for example, if you're talking about XRP getting to $10,000, right, the market cap will be like trillions, right? Now, yes, it doesn't necessarily mean that whole amount of trillions has had to go into XRP to get it to that price, but we're still talking a ridiculous amount of money that would have to get it into those kinds of numbers. And so even if it's not that high of a number, it's still going to be a thing where the amount of money that would be needed is unrealistic. So yes, it still does matter to a degree. Like, I get that it's not the exact number. I get that. But you're acting like because of that, there's like, it's not like a thing where, for example, like only $1,000 goes into XRP, but then it can have a market cap of like $1 trillion. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's still going to have to be certain levels of money that's been put in for it to get to that kind of market cap. So you can't just dismiss it entirely. Do you see what I'm saying? Like that's just not realistic. And so I get why people say this, but they kind of dismiss it like it just doesn't play a factor whatsoever. And that's incorrect. So yeah, again, I do agree. Market cap, it does matter. Okay. Why banks won't pump XRP to $10,000. So, yeah, this again, I couldn't agree more with. I've said this recently. I said it about a year or two ago, to be honest with you, because I've been covering the whole $10,000 thing for a long time. So why banks wouldn't want to just pump XRP to $10,000? Well, first and foremost, the whole thing that people base this off is just saying that XRP is going to be used by, every single bank in the world, basically. And this guy said, like, that's not necessarily realistic. Like, there's going to be competition out there. There's going to be, people who may want to still continue to use Swift, or they may want to use a different version, a different network, etc., etc. I completely agree. Like, don't get me wrong. Ripple and XRP will be an alternative. And I'm not saying that they won't have banks who will use them, but it doesn't mean that every bank in the world is going to use them. It doesn't. Now, that's not to say that XRP can't still be successful, but I'm just saying that it's not going to be as much of a guarantee as people think it is. And let's just say, hypothetically, every bank in the world was to subsequently end up using XRP. That is not going to be an overnight thing. It's not. That's going to be something that happens over years and years and years. And you can kind of see that already, right? Because if you look at XRP right now, if you look at Ripple, they currently have, I think, 300 partnerships with banks. That's not every bank in the world, right? So we can already see that it's been happening over time. They've been building up partnerships over time. And that's how it will be. It'll be a staggered process. So even if that was going to happen, it's not going to be a thing like this whole flip the switch theory where every bank's waiting to use XRP. No, it's not going to be that. And so another thing that he mentioned here, and this is something that I've said before, is the whole idea of creating a monopoly. So these banks, if they all start using XRP, they're going to turn Ripple, let's just say Ripple was to do this whole flip the switch theory where XRP goes to $10,000, Ripple will become the biggest financial institution in the world, bar none. They will have a monopoly over the whole financial industry. Do you think banks are going to want to allow that to happen? Do you think banks are going to want to put themselves in that situation where they're now at the mercy of Ripple, effectively? No, right? Would they even be allowed to let that happen? I doubt it. I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a point where Facebook wanted to launch their own crypto called Libra. And I think it was the SEC. They blocked it. They says no, because it's going to create too much of a monopoly. So, like these kinds of things, like if you really look into it, like you can see why this stuff isn't realistic. And like, the whole SWIFT system is ultimately like owned by the banks. It's like 11,000 banks that are part of this SWIFT network. Do you think they're going to want to let SWIFT just die out to then go over to Ripple and let Ripple be the big fish in the finance industry where none of these banks have now got control at all? Ripple just rules the road? No, of course not. Not at all. So look, man, like these are just a few points as to why this stuff isn't really realistic. I'm not going to keep going too much further because, I've done this so many times, but as I say, like for me, like I take this seriously. So while people are going to get frustrated and they're going to say whatever they're going to say in the comments, I've had plenty of debates with people in my comment section who keep saying that I'm wrong and I'm an idiot. And whenever we have a debate, they've never proven me wrong. Not once. And that's not me trying to be egotistical. What it is what I'm showing you is that even though people don't like what I'm saying, they can't argue it. I'm just trying to give people the truth so they can know what they're doing, because people are investing money on this kind of information. So for me, this is what it's about. It's about just trying to help people. And obviously the people who are tribalists, who are, they don't like anything negative being said about XRP, they're going to hate me for it. They will, but I'm not here for them. Those are the people who, there's no saving those people, right? Those people want to live in their bubble, in their echo chamber, and they want to believe what they want to believe. And that's fine. The people who I try to reach out to here for this kind of information is the people who are unsure and the people who just want the truth. And you are the guys who you may not say anything. You might just put a nice like on the video or whatever, and that's fine. You haven't got to put a comment or anything like that. But it's you guys who I'm trying to reach out to, because I know there's people out there, because people subscribe to me, not in big numbers, because that's why my channel isn't big, because I'm not doing these fantasy XRP numbers. But there are a small few who just want the truth, and I appreciate you guys, because you guys are the ones who I'm trying to help. You know, I can accept that I may not be a big channel because I'm not just talking XRP fantasy numbers, but if I'm helping people, that's what lets me sleep at night. I could sit here and do content all day about XRP reaching these crazy numbers and just make money, but that's not what I want to do. I want to help people. So look, guys, like this, in my opinion, it ain't happening. Oh, just one other thing. I'll just quickly add this and I'm done. There's been a recent announcement with Hedera, by the way, and they're actually making private blockchains for financial institutions, and one of the things that they're looking to do is pilot stablecoins for cross-border transactions. So when we talk about not every bank in the world is going to want to use Ripple and XRP, that's proof. Hedera are currently providing, like, building a private blockchain hash graph for financial institutions. So that tells you straight away that not every bank is going to go with XRP. And that's fine. Like, people make out like this is the end of the world. It's like, all you've got to do is just come back to reality. Like, it doesn't mean that XRP is not going to be successful. It doesn't mean that XRP is bad or anything like that. We're just being a bit more realistic about it. That's all. So, as I say, man, like, do some research and, really learn about this stuff, because there's a lot of people just perpetuating, absolute nonsense, and they're pushing it like it's fact. And this is what leads to all these issues, and this is why we have so many people who get angry when we cover this stuff, because they want to believe the fairy tale. But it's just not realistic. All right, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for watching this. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that bell. Take care.